Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Talent Finders would like to welcome impassioned and vibrant opera today and award-winning American tenor John Riesen. So welcome, John.
Thank you for having me today.
So John, firstly, I'd like to congratulate you on all your achievements. Can you please share with us how your entrepreneurial and opera and musical career began?
Absolutely. So it's kind of an interesting story for a musician. I grew up in the state of Michigan in the United States, and
Yes.
I was a baseball player. That was my true passion, having nothing to do with music.
Yes.
And I will admit my family was quite musical. My dad played the piano. My mother played the cello and sang in musicals in college. And my siblings liked music, but I was the baseball player. That's what I did.
Yes.
And toward the end of high school, probably when I was around 16 or 17, my grandmother on my mother's side offered to give all of us arts lessons. And she felt, particularly for me, it would make me a more well-rounded person to do something in the arts.
Yes.
And my family thought that I was the only one in the family who could not sing. I could not sing in tune. I could not match pitch. And that was one of those things in our family that everyone could do. So they said, John, you're going to take voice lessons because Grandma says so. And I, being a good kid, said, okay, I'll try this. I'll try this new adventure.
Yes.
And I'll never forget it. I did not an audition, but I guess it was an interview with a voice teacher in Livonia, Michigan, which is just outside of Detroit. And he made me sing some scales, and it went quite poorly. I remember pretty vividly because I came from a baseball practice. I was covered in dirt. The man was slightly offended at my attire and how dirty I was, and my mother was with me. And I missed every note that he played because I couldn't match pitch. And he turns to my mom and he says, this may be hard to believe, but your son, on a scale of 10, has a 10 out of 10 quality voice. Now, He doesn't know how to use it, but he has this super rare, unique set of talents and qualities that would do him really well, particularly if he were ever to sing classically. And my mom laughed. I thought it was kind of amusing because we both knew I was terrible. And this was just to be more well-rounded. This wasn't to pursue a new career. And anyway, we decided to go to take lessons with him. And over the course of the next year or so, I learned that I already knew how to breathe. I already knew how to use my body to use my air correctly because as a baseball pitcher, that's what I did. It was all about using mechanics to do a very complicated but simple motion to release a lot of power. And so as a pitcher, it was throwing the ball very hard. As a singer, it's about controlling your air so that you can very efficiently sing high notes, low notes, middle notes in the way that you'd like to. And
Yes.
so it didn't take long for my coordination to kick in, and suddenly I was singing in tune. And once I started singing in tune, I had this gigantic range.
Amazing. That's amazing.
And,
Carry on.
and so sorry, go ahead. Oh, sorry. So this teacher says, you know, you really should consider going into music in college because you have these unique talents. You're 6 foot tall, which is already an advantage as a tenor because my vocal range went up to a high C. He said, you're a tenor, but your voice is very rich, which is not normal because if you have high Cs, usually your voice sits a little higher, but mine
Right.
sits lower. You are very athletic, and so your stamina naturally is higher. So if you were to sing in an opera, one of the challenges of opera is stamina, being able to sing for 3 hours straight. And he said, well, that's who you are. You're built to go for hours and hours and hours as an athlete. So I don't think you'd struggle with this. And so I ended up auditioning for Michigan State on top of, trying out for baseball.
Wow,
And
that's
I
amazing.
got offered essentially to have my tuition and everything paid for to go for opera. And that's when things got complicated for me because I had to choose between, do I pursue baseball full-time or do I pursue singing full-time?
Yes.
And that's kind of how it basically got started.
Wow, amazing. So opera is and musical theater is highly competitive as well as a
Hmm.
very niche musical speciality. So where and when did your passion start, and what do you believe makes your opera and musical style unique, and how has this helped you sustain and maintain such a long career?
Wonderful question. So to continue what I was saying, I get to college and I choose this new path because obviously I did choose to go into singing eventually.
Yes.
As I was there and I learned what opera was and I learned what musical theater was, it became apparent that I did fit, like this teacher I had said, in the cracks of all these different what are called fachs in the opera world, your specialization, what type of voice you have. And I fit right into a very unique spot. And that unique spot was that I was a tenor with a very rich, loud voice that had an exceptional range, which opened the door to doing all sorts of romantic leads, which is kind of the place you want to be if you're a singer.
Yes, for sure.
And so even at the age of 19, when I first started singing, I was at Michigan State University, which is a Division I major university with 50,000 students. And the School of Music is quite big and well known. I got cast in the role of Romeo in Romeo and Juliet, the Gounod, the French opera, at the age of 19 when there were 30-year-olds and 35-year-olds in the School of Music who could have done it. But
Gee,
for
that's
some
amazing.
reason, 19-year-old me got chosen. And things from there, I mean, I fell in love with opera at that point because Romeo and Juliet, first of all, is the classic romance story, and getting to be up on stage with an orchestra playing the most beautiful music as you're just screaming your heart out is one of the most amazing experiences for a young person. And I fell madly in love with that feeling of really giving all that I had to give, that I used to give on a baseball diamond on a stage through my voice.
Wow, that's
And
amazing.
from there, doors just opened. And
Yes.
honestly, they didn't stop opening until COVID shut a few doors, just because we can't go places right now. But
Yes.
I've been one of those lucky few in this profession where I've been walking on a path and there was an open door, so I walked through it. And then I was walking down that path and there was an open door, so I walked through it. And I went from college and then I got paid to get a master's degree. And then I got into residency programs, which is part of the opera training world. You go to do a residency at an opera company for a year, and then you go to another opera company for a year, and you build up your resume so that you can get a professional manager. And I got one in New York City right out of residency. And then I started what's called main stage performing, where you just fly around the country or the world performing leading roles at companies.
Wow.
And it went so fast with no breaks. I never had to do that singer thing that many people have to do, where they wait a year for opportunities, or they have to wait till next audition season to get a job, or any of those things. I still go back to that teacher I had who said, yeah, you've got this 10 out of 10 unique thing going on. And everywhere you go, people are going to, whether or not they like your particular style, they'll recognize that it's so unique and needed in the business that it'll be a lot easier than you think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's been kind of amazing. And so what makes me unique, I guess, is having been an athlete who has stamina naturally, just because it's who I am. It's what I've done since I was a kid.
Yeah.
That's a unique quality in itself, to be a young person who can sing for a long time. But then my range and my innate upbeat personality, those are all very unique things, I guess, along with my being 6 foot tall as a tenor. And those things have really just opened doors. I walk into a room and people are already going, oh, wow, this is so unique. And I haven't even sung yet.
Wow, amazing. So what would you say some of your biggest lessons and learnings have been within your career?
Oh, that's an amazing question, too. So I think the biggest thing I've learned, and the most important thing I've learned about being in the music business in particular, the performance business,
Yes.
is that everyone is talented. And so the business is not about who is the most talented. What the business is about is how do we put this? Who has the best networking abilities? And when I say that, I mean, who is the person who's most magnetic on stage and off stage? Because I think you just interviewed Marina Arsenievich.
Yes.
That's a great example of someone who is magnetic. We've become great friends recently. We've become great friends recently, and we've been performing together. And one of the things that we see in each other is the fact that our personalities are these very positively aggressive personalities that are magnetic to people and make people want to smile, make people want to talk, make people want to join in conversation. And when you're in a room of performers and you have the performers who are brooding and you have the performers who have to be in their own world to get into their character, and you have the performers who are kind of rude and full of themselves, and you have the performers who are too busy to deal with their performing because they have life. And these are all not negative things. These are just personality types.
Yes. So it's learning to adapt to those personalities as well.
Yes. And it's interesting to see how your networking goes from there, on how your personality, on top of your talent and on top of your work ethic, draws people in. And so I've learned that the more magnetic and open and loving a colleague can be in this business, if assuming that they already have the talent and the work ethic, because to get to the professional level, I assume you have those already.
Yes, of course.
That's the thing that really makes the difference, is making friendships, making family members out of your colleagues and treating them with the utmost respect leads to big things, I've noticed. And I've seen it in so many colleagues I look up to, and I've seen it in my own career. The opportunities come because someone somewhere took a risk on you because they loved you.
Yes, of course.
And not necessarily because you were just good, but because they loved you. And that's the biggest lesson I think I've learned as a performer.
Amazing. So you consistently impress audiences with your fantastically powerful voice, as mentioned by Texarkana Gazette, as well as your growing career, which boasts a variety of roles, including significant work in opera, musical theater, recordings, and concerts. So can you please share with us more about this and how these opportunities came about, and what do you believe you have done differently to achieve these roles?
Yes. So each facet of the performance world is different, and they have their own pathways. I started in the opera pathway and then slowly branched out into musical theater and then into pops, and now I'm working with Marina to become a much more classical crossover artist, to do more popular things, just because I love communicating to larger audiences. It's part of who I am. But in the opera route, you typically, you go to school, you do a residency, you get a manager, and then you work your way to the top of performing at companies. And a lot of my colleagues who are my age have asked me, how do you work so much? I've gotten to a point, or had gotten to a point right before COVID, where I was having to turn down work because it was either constantly overlapping or it would have just been too much and ruining my personal life, which is an odd position to be in as a performer, where you're going, no, I can't do that.
Not everyone is in that fortunate position, so to speak.
Exactly. And so people my age were going, how are you doing this? Because we're all following the same pathway. We're all doing the same stuff. We're all doing the same programs. And we're all doing, in America, there's only 35 training programs or so once you're professional. And there's only a couple hundred companies. And somehow you, John, are getting all these opportunities. And I, who am at the same level as you, am not. And what I learned very early on from some mentors of mine, and this goes back to baseball too, is that people appreciate knowing that they're appreciated. I know that sounds silly, but it's true. And I learned that back when I was playing baseball in Detroit. My coach was the most amazing man. And he would always, say things about just respect each other. And when an ump does a good job in a game, an umpire, the referee of the game, go up to him and thank him. Because you know what? He might umpire your next game or a really important game. And if he likes you, he will view the game differently. That's just how the world works.
Yes.
And so it's about creating this this positive image of yourself, but also genuinely mean it and go, thank you for your time, thank you for doing what you did. It means a lot to have a good umpire. Okay, so then I translate that into singing. You go work at a company and you have a conductor, a director, you have a stage manager, you have an assistant stage manager, you have lighting crew, you have stage crew, you have the people behind the curtains, the prop people, you have the people moving the set, you have your fellow colleagues, you have the makeup designer, you have the wig designer, and it goes on.
Yeah.
And I learned from many colleagues that if you treat them like they deserve to be treated, which is like the wonderful, talented artists they are,
yes,
they remember you. And not only do they remember you, but they love you and they speak about you. And so you could be like I was back when I was 24 or 25, just starting in the professional world. You suddenly have this network of people who work everywhere. They work from the Met all the way down to places in Florida and Arkansas.
yeah,
Because it's the same network of people. I mean, it's a very small musical network. They'll remember you and they'll go, oh, I was just working with the most wonderful person. And they're only 24. You should totally take a look at them. And then the biggest thing is then reaching out to people, which is hard. It is hard for people to reach out genuinely and be like, hi, I remember you. Do you remember me? I wanted to thank you for the impact you had on me. I would like to keep in touch. Is it all right if I continue to tell you how my career progresses and ask you for advice as the years pass? And most people will say yes, because it's flattering. And also, most people are not awful people.
No, exactly. And it's all about
most
relationship building, right?
It's all about relationships, I've learned.
Yeah.
And so I did that from the very beginning. I kept in touch with people. I remember I had an experience where I woke up in the middle of the night once, and I just had someone's name in my head. It was actually Renee Fleming. I did a masterclass with Renee Fleming when I was 22, 21 or something. And she was blown away. I have it on tape, and she legitimately asked in front of the audience why I was in school, because I was so unique. And she was like, you're better than a lot of the people I sing with. And of course, I was flattered. And she said it to a public audience, and I watched it 8 more times on the tape afterward because it meant so much to me to have Renee Fleming tell me that.
Yeah.
And I went back, and I just kept, I started looking for a way to tell her thank you again. Right. And I remember I emailed the College of Music that had gotten me the masterclass and said, who contacted you to bring in Renee Fleming? And so they got me her PR person. So then I contacted her PR person, and I said, I just want to say thank you to Miss Fleming. And eventually they responded to me and said, that is so sweet. Here is her assistant's email. So then I emailed her assistant and I said, I just want to say these things to Miss Fleming about how special that was and how her words impacted me, and how I think it's amazing that someone with as large a career as her would take the time to work with young people and be so encouraging, because she didn't have to be encouraging. Yeah. And eventually it got to Renee, and Renee then reached out to me. And she was so impressed with the fact that I found my way to thank her, and that my thank you didn't have any questions or I didn't ask anything of her. I was just saying thank you. And she was so impressed that then she said, I'm going to make these calls for you.
Wow, that's amazing.
And it's just a small example of how that network works, and how you get a step ahead in a business like this. You don't have to ask for help until you have a relationship with someone, but up to that point, you're just building a positive relationship, and people will do what they can. I mean, I know I do for younger singers too. I remember what it was like being in college.
Amazing. So COVID-19 has turned our worlds upside down and inside out. So how and what have you had to do to adapt as an artist? And can you give us some examples as an artist and an industry that has been heavily impacted with so many talented artists having to do other work during this time? So what would you say from a business perspective, and what advice would you give to other artists and talents going forward to generate other income streams?
Sure. So, I mean, as you said, it's a very hard time for artists, just because, especially in the United States right now, Broadway is closed at least till 2021, perhaps longer. Opera companies are closed till 2021, perhaps longer. Concerts are very sparse and few between. And of course, there are millions of us competing for those. So good luck. It right now is the age of trying something new.
Yes.
And what I found is that our world right now revolves around streaming. It just does. I mean, right now, even what we're doing, the world revolves around this. Getting online, listening to Spotify, Apple Music, Google Play, Netflix, Hulu, blah, blah, blah. This goes on. Disney Plus. This is where our world is right now. And it's not a bad thing. It's what we've been leading to. Yes. Because entertainment is a huge part of our world.
Absolutely.
And we all seek it. We seek music. We seek shows. We seek plays. We seek movies. And right now, we can't do them live as much. And so I realized very early on, I would say in COVID, once I got sent home from jobs and I started getting the calls from my manager saying, oh, your April's canceled. Oh, your May's canceled. Oh, your June's canceled. Oh, your October's canceled. That I had to do something because I don't like sitting around. And I'm not an apathetic personality. As I said, as I've been described as positively aggressive. Now, I don't think it means I'm aggressive in the negative sense, but
no.
But I have a lot of passion and it resonates off of me. And I try and make things happen for the positive. And so I very quickly started trying to expand my understanding of how streaming and performance would work. And I noticed that performers outside of the few famous ones were not doing much yet. This is back in March.
Yes.
Especially in the classical realm, there was very little happening. People were just panicking and worried about losing their work and worried about their families, which completely understandable, no problem. But the industries did not have any sort of plan to stream. No. And now, of course, we can look at Broadway just released that Hamilton on Disney Plus, which was genius to do. And that's the direction that performing has to go right now, getting things out there for people to hear. And so I had thought of this back in March and I started on my own, but I realized not very many people are searching the internet for opera right now, or were at the time. And with musical theater, with Broadway closing, I figured, okay, well, I need to figure something else out. And that's when I had the idea to reach out to someone that I had met that I admired a lot and say, look, you are a more famous artist than I am, and you have a large audience. Why don't we do something for your audience that would be special? And that was with Marina Arsenievich.
Yeah, she's amazing. Wow.
Incredible. I met her I was performing a concert for a friend, and it was for a charity event, and it was not meant to be publicized or anything, with my wife, Jillian. We were both singing with our dear friend Neil playing piano, and lo and behold, Marina in America was there because she lived down the street from the place we were doing it. And someone comes up to me right before we perform and goes, just so you know, you have a PBS superstar in the audience. And I'm going, oh, that's great, because this is not an event that makes me look great. I was doing it from the love of my heart, not to like get, it wasn't one of those galas that you do at Carnegie Hall or something where it's all prestigious and it makes you look good. It was in someone's garage, and we were just sharing our experience to raise money for breast cancer. And
that's amazing.
Marina was there, and I remember she came up to me and she said, I got here and I thought this was going to be a joke, but I came anyway. And then I watched you two perform, and I'm just blown away. I had no idea I could be so moved in a garage by a performance. Wow. And then she said, keep in touch. And so this was back in December of 2019. And so I thought of her because she posts these amazing videos from her house. And I said, hey, Marina, you said to keep in touch. I really admire what you do, and you have a gigantic fan base. I think we should do something together that excites them, something new, something people aren't doing. And that's when we started doing, originally it was called Together Apart, our little series where she would play one of her arrangements on the piano, and I would sing a vocal line to it. And they were these amazing duets that we created. And we did songs like You Raise Me Up and The Impossible Dream and a version of O Sole Mio, and it started off like that. We were just apart. We'd have phone calls. She would write an arrangement because she's amazing, and then she would send it to me, and I would figure out how to fit my voice in, and it was really fun. And then people started reacting to it and getting all excited, and suddenly we had, I think the You Raise Me Up has 20-some thousand views on YouTube, and then it had 20-some thousand views separately on Facebook, and another 10 on Instagram, and that was just the first one. Suddenly it's like, okay, now 50,000 plus people are seeing this and loving it and sending in messages about how this is so special, and this uplifting message means a lot to them. And I think that convinced Marina that it was worth it.
Yeah,
because she had nothing to gain, if we're going to be honest about this. She's already a well-established superstar internationally, and she's working with someone in a different industry, and that message from her audience gave her that reassurance that, okay, this is somewhere we should go. So we continued with this, and now it's gotten to such a point where we're working on our 8th release, and we've gotten comfortable enough that we've added each other to our quarantine units, and have actually begun performing in person in her beautiful home, so that the quality of the performances are higher. And we started adding in like multiple camera angles and microphones and stuff, so that we can give a high quality live performance to our audience. And in time, our goal is to eventually do live performances, perhaps even in empty theaters for the audience. And all of this just comes from the idea that you reach out to somebody you admire and they take a risk on you, and it turns into something awesome.
Yeah,
that's how this business will stay alive.
Yeah,
it's the only way to keep a business like this alive without the stage, is to bring the stage to people's homes.
Absolutely. So what would you say some of your biggest career highlights have been?
It depends on who you ask.
Many.
Let's see. I guess in terms of prestige, the most important job that I've had was working with the New York City Ballet at the Lincoln Center.
Yeah, that would be phenomenal. Wow.
It was so cool. I did several things there, but the cooler one for me was doing the West Side Story. I was the voice of Tony, who's, of course, the main character.
Amazing.
While, a famous ballet dancer is out there on the stage dancing me. I'm singing him.
Wow.
And, you're in this, 3,000 seat theater that was jam-packed every night for all the performances, and singing Bernstein's music in that space in New York City was pretty special by itself. And then to be a part of such a prestigious organization and performance was just mind-blowing. And that's what really opened the door to me starting to do musical theater in the first place, because that happened the first time in 2018, and that led to me getting a full production of West Side Story in Colorado. And then that led to me doing Beauty and the Beast as Gaston. And then that led to me doing Kiss Me Kate, and that led to me doing Candide, and the list just goes on. A Little Night Music, and all these other very famous, musicals that take a voice like mine. And that door just shot open because of the Lincoln Center, which of course makes sense. And so prestige-wise, that was just incredible. I think one of my favorite things I've done recently was I got to be in Sweeney Todd.
Oh, fabulous.
At Michigan Opera Theater. What a show. Oh my gosh. At Michigan Opera Theater. And I got to be with several just Broadway legends. Karen Ziemba, Ron Raines, and a couple other people. You're just sitting there with your mouth on the floor. Ron Daniels, the director, is actually the guy who wrote the original play that Stephen Sondheim bought to write the musical. And he was the director of the show in Detroit. Oh, so cool. Oh,
amazing.
Yeah, it was it wasn't, it's not as prestigious as the Lincoln Center, but the experience was just mind-blowingly cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So leadership is such a big subject right now, or lack of leadership. What would you say is different about your leadership style when working with a cast or a team? And what would you say needs to change from an entrepreneurial and global perspective to change and improve the current narrative?
That is the question, isn't it? I personally, my leadership style, my style within a cast is I've always been a positive light. I've been told that I resemble a golden retriever in personality, is what I've been told many times. My wife would tell me similarly that I'm just always optimistic. And even in hard times, I mean, I've experienced hard times. We all have. I've had injuries and I've had heartache, but I've always managed to find a way to get through it and then make something positive out of all the negative around me. And that's just a basic personality thing, but also I think it's a choice you make. You make a choice of how to handle things. And you get handed a bad situation and you can grieve over it for a while, but eventually you can make something out of it or choose to do something beautiful with what you were given. And so my leadership style is always to be uplifting and supportive of my castmates, and to such a point where I get confused sometimes because I'll be in a rehearsal and I won't be in a particularly great mood. I'm just kind of there. I'm doing my thing, said hello and good morning to people. I smiled, I cracked a joke. I went up on stage, I did my job, I came off, I drank some water, and all of a sudden I'm getting taken aside by the stage crew and they're saying, I just have to say, every time you walk in the room, it's like the sun starts shining and my heart starts glowing, and I'm just so glad that we have an energy like yours in the room. And I'm going, but I'm not even doing anything. I just walked in the room and said good morning. And
I think it's what they're saying is it's based off your energy, because you can feel people's energy and, that kind of thing in an environment. So I'm sure that's probably what they were also referencing to.
I'm sure as well. But to me, I'm just trying to be nice. I'm just being a nice person, like, hey, good morning. How are you doing? But that's how I like to interact with cast members and colleagues and people within the business. I don't think there's much place right now for being selfish in all of this. I think a lot of people think that's the way to get ahead in the world, and they would just be wrong. The most happy, successful people I know, not the most successful, but the most happy and successful people I know are the people who are rich in love and friends and family and network, and they're not struggling for anything because they have this gigantic family and network of people that they love and love them, and helps them to make things possible, make their dreams happen, because they all support each other. And I wish that could happen more in our world right now, is we have a very, we have a lot of individualism happening in our world right now, which leads to pushing people away and breaking apart families and saying, I don't want to support you, you don't want to support me, then we don't need to interact. And that's not going to,
there's a lot of division, right?
Yeah. And I don't think that fixes anything. It's not going to lead, you're not going to get what you want by being divided. You will get what you want by loving each other through it and disagreeing, but still keeping that we can do this together even though we disagree attitude. You can get something done that way.
Yes.
And it happens all the time in the performance world, where you don't necessarily get along with your colleagues, but you love them and you treat them with the utmost respect and you create a beautiful thing out of it.
Yeah.
And I want that more for our world. This idea that if we came together, regardless of agreeing, because you don't need to agree to get along. No. You just need to get along to get along.
Yes, exactly. So you've also been honored to sing the national anthem at some major sporting events, baseball, hockey, and many more. How did this come about, and did this open other career opportunities for you? And can you please share with us more about this?
Oh, absolutely. So I'll go in the order that they happened. When I was at Michigan State as a singer, one of the big opportunities there is to sing for the sporting events. And those came just because the sporting events, which are very important at Michigan State University as a Big Ten university, they want the best quality they can get, and if they can represent themselves as a school by using one of their better known students or alumnus, it's a win-win for Michigan State. And so they would reach out to the head of the voice area, who was my teacher, and say, hey, we've got a hockey game coming up where it's this big game. We're going to have cameras there and stuff. Would you provide us with a singer you think that would be worthy of that situation? And so I got asked to do that many times. And then baseball, I always asked for those because, of course, that's my life. I love going out on the baseball field and being, hey, look, I'm on a baseball field. And so that's how that started with the Michigan State ones. And then as I went into the professional world, when you're working as a resident artist for an opera company, they typically have connections with all the organizations in their city because that's what many nonprofits do. They reach out and say, hey, we'd love to have your support, and our people will come sing for you, and it'll be great. And so when I was in Pensacola, we did the farm league for hockey there, and we supported the opera company by going as a group and singing. And then when I was in Shreveport, we did the same thing. And as you bounce around companies, you get asked to do these fun things because they have these connections. And then as I went into the professional world, I got a call from the Detroit Tigers, which, of course, that's my hometown professional baseball team, which is pretty special for me. And they said, look, we're having a day to honor the alumni of Michigan State University, and it's a particularly special day. And we thought, hey, let's have this professional singer come sing the national anthem who is also an alumni of Michigan State University.
Wow.
And I was like, yes, I will do this. So I went. It was an amazing experience. It was awesome. And then that led, of course, to more things like that. But honestly, one of the problems I found with the classical world before it crosses over into popular classical or pop opera or things like that, just the straight classical world, is they don't see much value in those events outside of maybe some audience members will come see the opera. Yeah. I don't think they don't view it on the same level as a pop singer does, where they're going, oh, look at all this exposure to 50,000 people or 100,000 people on TV. It's not viewed the same way. And so it didn't really help in the opera world necessarily, but it definitely helped. Well, it helped me in my heart, but it helped with what I'm doing now, where I'm trying to create a new image for a broader audience.
Yeah.
Suddenly them realizing that, oh my gosh, I think I saw that guy at the Tigers game, or, oh, I think I saw that guy when he sang for Barack Obama, or I think I saw that guy because that's how it works with popular music, where your normal person who doesn't want to go to the opera is watching YouTube, and all of a sudden they remember, I've seen this guy before.
Yes.
Sure. I know I do that at least.
Yes. So that leads me to the next question. You had the privilege of singing for President Barack Obama, Jimmy Carter, and other dignitaries and highly influential governmental or government and political figures, which is incredible. So can you share with us more about how these opportunities came about, and what were those experiences like for you?
Oh, yeah. So which happened first? I think the first amazing experience I had singing for a political figure was Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Wow.
I was at Chautauqua Opera, and Chautauqua, New York is this glorious little island in upstate New York near Buffalo. And it's this community, this vacation summer community that started well over 100 years ago for not like-minded people who are educated to come and have these open discussions about politics, religion, education, things like that, from differing views, but get along. It was this idea of community, and it was a very highly sought-after place that people would go. And now it's become a vacation place that people go, and they summer there, and they have an opera company, a ballet company, a theater company, a symphony, the list goes on, that are just there, and they're very, very wonderful and prestigious, and they bring in keynote speakers, and they bring in famous performers from all over the world and things to their big amphitheater stage, which holds over 6,000 people. And I was there as a resident artist, a young artist at Chautauqua Opera, doing some performing over the summer in 2012, I think. And suddenly the general director of the company calls a meeting and he goes, "Hey guys, Ruth Bader Ginsburg is coming to Chautauqua to give a speech. And she asked for some opera singers to perform her favorite songs so that she could talk about how opera has influenced her politics and who she is as a person."
Wow, what an amazing experience.
And so they said, "We want you to submit your ideas, and then we'll do a little audition thing, and we'll see what we can do." And so they kind of put up the list of things that she wanted to talk about, the certain shows and stuff. And I said, "Oh, I've actually done this show." And so I walked into the office and said, "Just so you know, I've done the show that Ruth Bader Ginsburg wants to talk about. And I really would like to use that. Is that okay?" And they said, "Sure." And so they ended up choosing me to do something from the Pirates of Penzance, which is one of her favorite shows.
Oh,
and
wow.
So we're out there on the stage. We perform one of her favorite scenes from her favorite shows for her. And then she talks about how special that was and how it influenced her life. And then afterward, we got to go with her backstage and talk with her and take pictures and get to know her. And she's this tall.
Yeah, she's short, huh?
Man, well, what an amazing person for someone so small.
She's dynamite, though. That woman is amazing.
It was so cool.
She might be small, but she's dynamite for sure.
But mighty, small but mighty.
Yeah.
But it was just an amazing experience, and that was the first one. And I think the next year I was at Michigan State still, and Barack Obama came to Michigan State to sign that big agriculture bill he signed, I think in 2013 or 14, and it was at least a big deal in Michigan. I'm not sure if it was a big deal for the world, but agriculture is a big deal in Michigan, and so that was something special that he was coming to our school to sign this big piece of legislation. And my teacher took me aside and said, "They need someone to sing all these songs for the ceremony right before the president walks out and gives his speech and then signs the bill in front of all these people and the TV. And we want it to be you." And I said, "Okay, yeah." And he said, "The only thing is the Secret Service is going to do an extensive background check on you and do all this other stuff and maybe in touch with you. We don't know. But you're not allowed to go near the president or be in the same room as the president in the way that I was going to be backstage unless the Secret Service clears you." And
Wow.
And so I lo and behold, I got approved. I have never really done anything of note in a negative way, thankfully.
Wow.
And I did get a call from the Secret Service about something, and I got to talk with them. And then they said, "Okay, great. Well, we're excited for you to sing for the president." And so I went to that event, and I was backstage with the governor of Michigan and the mayor of Lansing and all these other things. And then some bodyguards came in. I guess they were Secret Service. And then the president walks in, and he's much taller than I thought he was, and super charming guy. And I go out, I sing the stuff I need to sing, and then as I'm leaving, he walks by and he's like, "That was so awesome. Thank you for doing that." I was like, "Yeah!"
Amazing. Gee.
It was so cool. And so that was in the end of my master's degree, and that was just so cool. And then I went out into the performance world, and when I was singing at Shreveport Opera, there was a big event. I can't remember the name of the event, but President Jimmy Carter has started a charity whose name I cannot remember, and we were singing for the 25th year, I guess, inauguration or something of this event, and he was there front and center, and we sang some songs to him, and I did a couple solos and things like that. And then the event was supposed to be, we sing, we sit down, the president, our former president, walks up, says his stuff, everyone's happy, we party, good job. He instead stands up and walks over to each of us and has like a little conversation with us in the middle of the ceremony because he was so touched by the singing.
Wow.
And then we got some private pictures with him and stuff like that, which this was all unexpected. We didn't know we were going to get to meet him at all. But he loved what we did so much. And it was a very powerful moment because, I mean, President Jimmy Carter, because of my age, was someone that, I've heard about in history books and stuff, and I saw in the news, but I didn't ever think that I would directly interact with him because he was in office so far before I was born.
Yes, of course.
But it was amazing. And the list just continued. As I got into the professional world, the list just kind of continued on, because the higher up you go in the performance world, the more galas and the more private events you go to, and you start rubbing elbows with people that you would never imagine. And you're going, wow, this is really fun. I get to meet these people, and they're so impressed with me because I'm singing for them.
And so memorable. I mean, those are things that are so, like, priceless in the sense that you just, like, the value of something like that's just incredible.
I agree.
So you've performed at some of the most prestigious and iconic locations in the world, such as the Lincoln Center, New York Ballet, Carnegie Hall, and so many more. Can you please share with us how and what this experience was like for you? And when was your first big break that changed the trajectory of your career? Or were there sort of multiple ones?
That's a good question. I'll say, as a performer, you kind of slowly work your way up. I've noticed there's very few, at least in my side of performing, there's very few instances of you're not good and you're learning and all of a sudden, oh, I'm famous. That's a very popular thing, to be an amateur and suddenly have fame. In the more classical side, it's all about you reach a certain level of your training and you've performed a lot, and all of a sudden you get opportunities that other people aren't getting, and it's much more seamless because you've been doing it, and all of a sudden it's just you're doing it at a higher level. And so my experience was I'd been performing constantly for years, and all of a sudden you're just doing it for more people. Though I will say, as I mentioned in my last story, when I sang for Ruth Bader Ginsburg, there were 6,500 people there live. And so that's one of the biggest audiences I've had live to date. And that was back when I was in my 20s, early 20s. And you step forward, and even the Lincoln Center only has 3,000 people. Carnegie Hall has maybe 1,500 people there live. And so you get trained when you're in my side of the world very early to sing for giant crowds. And so all you're doing is raising the prestige of those crowds as you get to a higher level company, and not necessarily the number. And so it never really freaked me out. And then singing on camera, like for TV and stuff, definitely never freaked me out, because it's way easier to talk to a screen or sing to a screen than it is to sing for people whose eyes you can see.
Yeah. In
my opinion. And that might be just me. And so as I got to a higher level, it got easier, because suddenly, I hate to say this, but people were more educated and more understood what I was doing more. Yeah. And so if I went out there and I did something particularly nuanced, or I took a risk, you would get rewarded more from the higher level. So at the Lincoln Center or something, if you do something very special technically, they notice, because they know that it's special technically. And suddenly the applause that follows, or the gasp from the audience, is very special. Whereas when you're doing something when you're younger and it's at a lower level and you're in Nowhereville, Texas or something, the audience loves it, but they don't know why they love it. They just love it for what it is.
Yeah.
And so it almost makes it easier for someone like me as you go up the scale, as you suddenly, you're performing at a bigger company, at a bigger symphony or a bigger concert hall. Suddenly your audience skill level goes up with you, and it makes it almost more enjoyable. Some people would say it makes it harder because they feel like, oh, well, then they know if I mess up. But I don't like thinking about performing in terms of messing up, because you're not there to be perfect. You're there to share something about yourself, to share something about the gift that you have, or the experience that you had, the story you have. And if you're there trying not to mess up, chances are that's all you're going to do is try not to mess up. But if you're there to share your heart, then people will see that, and they'll latch onto that side of it and not care. You make one mistake, but you emotionally brought something beautiful to the stage. They'll ignore the one mistake and they'll be crying with you.
Yes.
I found. But you could be perfect and trying not to mess up and give nothing emotionally, and they'll go, what was that person's name?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of been my experience with how that all works in terms of the different houses. And I'd say the big break for me was truly that Lincoln Center experience. That opened so many doors and gave me, I don't know what the right word is, clout, in a different side of my profession, because opera is opera, and
Yes.
it's very specific, and you fit into a very specific mold, and you do your very specific job, and it's a one facet job, and it's a very beautiful job, but it's exactly what you expect basically along a trajectory. Once I opened the musical theater and pops side and symphony and stuff like that side, suddenly this wealth of stuff could come in. And I started meeting Broadway producers, and I started meeting Broadway directors, and I started meeting, symphony conductors and stuff like that don't do opera, but they do these songs that take a voice like mine, but they're more musical theater, or they're more pops. They're more famous songs from the 40s, 50s, 60s, stuff like that.
Yes.
And once that started, I started getting a name in concerts and charity work and stuff like that. And without it, I would never have met Marina. And if I hadn't met Marina, we wouldn't be doing these awesome things we're doing now in this isolation
it's all
time.
connected, right?
It's amazing. It's all like this, all one big network.
Yes, absolutely. So what are the 3 key pieces of advice you would give to other entrepreneurs and those looking to pursue a career in the entertainment and music industry? And what legacy would you like to leave, or how would you like to be remembered?
Oh, okay. Part 1, I think I have that question somewhere so that I can stare at it to remember the 3 parts of it. Okay. Advice I would give is don't think that your performance and everything is about yourself.
No.
If it's about yourself, you've already missed the opportunity to do something great. You're performing for other people for a reason. There's someone who performed for you that made you want to perform for other people. And the way that you felt as that person inspired you is the way that you're trying to make someone else feel. And sharing your story, and whether it's a heartbreaking story or an uplifting story or a funny story or whatever, is to move someone in the audience, to take them away from what they're experiencing right now. And even in this time of COVID, through their phone or through their computer, you're trying to remind them that the world is not the worst place ever, even though they're trapped at home and they can't go to the bar with their friends, or they can't go to Broadway and see a show, or they can't fly to Spain to see their family. This is to remind them that life is beautiful. So remember, it's not about you.
No.
It's not about being perfect and proving that you're great. It's about sharing something beautiful with your audience so that they feel something. And that's also how you build a career.
Yeah.
Sharing something with your castmates too. It's not just your audience. Share who you are and your love and your genuine feelings with the people around you, and it'll create this nurturing atmosphere to make things happen. And so that's my second piece of advice is, once again, don't make it about you when you're with colleagues and people you're working with. Be a supportive, loving, open person with them too, because it's not about you.
Yeah, absolutely.
The more you give, this is a classic saying, the more you give, the more you get.
Yes.
And you're not giving to get.
No.
But there is a pattern there. You give of yourself emotionally, passionately, spiritually, whatever you need to give to your colleagues, to your audience, and you will get an amazing reaction back.
Yes.
If it's genuine. And then the last piece of advice would be to reach out to people right now. This is a great time to tell people how much they meant to you in your career or in your business, and say, I loved how you influenced me, whether you knew it or not. Or you're probably sitting at home too. Well, I was thinking about you. That goes a long way. I know when people that I because I'm a performer, I have thousands of friends, but I can't think about all of them all day.
No.
And so when one of them reaches out to me that I haven't talked to in a year, it brings back a flood of memories of who they are and what that meant to me. And the fact that they're reaching out to me to say something so sweet, I suddenly am like, oh my gosh, this person is so on my mind.
Yeah.
That is a life thing, but also in the business, that's how you open doors for yourself, is by continuing to remind people that you care about them, because then they continue to care about you. And that's kind of that idea of out of sight, out of mind. These people may literally thought you were the best thing ever, but you have not reached out to them. You have not asked them how their children were. You have not asked them how they've been since the passing of their parents. You haven't invested in their life. Why would they remember who you are, even though you blew their mind in a performance?
Yeah, exactly.
and so those are my three big things of advice. And
what
what's the
legacy
final
would
piece?
you like to leave?
Yes. I
Well,
guess
how would you like to
legacy,
be remembered?
honestly, I'm still figuring that out. I think I've always been very much into this idea of uplifting people. And
Yeah.
if there's one thing that I could truly do is use what I've been given, which is a lot. I've given many gifts. I've been given a body that has more stamina than the average person. I've been blessed with certain looks and certain aspects of my personality that I did nothing to really get other than continue working on them.
Yeah.
And I want to use that to inspire people and to remind people that life has all these beautiful things in it, and that if we were to love each other and treat each other well, then we could fix a lot of the problems that we're all experiencing. And it's this lack of people wanting to love each other or wanting to get over the fact that they disagree on things that is what our world is struggling with right now, I think, at its core. We don't want to get along.
And people don't listen to one another either.
Exactly. And that's in the same vein. And so I want my legacy to be an uplifting one. I want people to, if I could have great fame, if I could, someday be 70 years old and look back and go, I did this well, it would be because people associated what I did with something very positive, something loving and open-hearted and genuine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, John, for joining us today, and hopefully you can come back in the future and we can see where you are in your journey. If people would like to connect with you, what are the best platforms to do so?
Well, Instagram is always a great one. It's at Riesen, R-I-E-S-E-N, John, J-O-H-N. That's a great one. Of course, I have my professional Facebook and my personal Facebook, which is also just my name. And people are welcome to send me messages. I'm actually pretty good at responding to all of them because I get annoyed when I want to talk to someone who's in the business. Oh my gosh. And it's like, okay, I'm sorry. You're like one tier above me and you're looking down on me enough that you won't even respond to my message.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's like, hold on. We performed at the same places. Why are you ignoring me?
Yeah.
But
and are you on LinkedIn? Are you on LinkedIn as well? Or?
I am on LinkedIn. I need to get better at using it because it's not one that is used much in opera musical theater, but I should start using it more now that I'm doing more things.
And Twitter?
So I am on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter.
Okay.
I just started Twitter this year. And of course, if you want to hear some of the stuff that I've been doing with Marina in particular, or my albums and things like that from the past, they're on Spotify. Most of our performances are on Instagram, on IGTV, YouTube, of course. We're performers, so there's lots of stuff on YouTube. There's a wealth of things to enjoy, and especially with me, you can find stuff from 6 years ago all the way to now, and you can kind of see the journey and go, wow, that's so cool how he's grown.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, and hopefully we can have you back soon.
I would love that. Thank you for having me.